Welcome to the Deep Dive. You gave us the sources this week, specifically the YAR Sports Network Week 4 College Football Recap. And, well, what they describe isn't just a busy Saturday.
No, not at all.
It's more like a full-scale geological event.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to go way beyond just, reading an updated top 25 list.
Right.
We're going to cut through all that noise to find the actual cause and effect that led to really the biggest upheaval of the season so far.
It's a really essential deep dive because the data doesn't lie. What we thought was the established hierarchy of the early season.
With the teams?
Exactly. The teams that looked safe, the teams that had some margin for error, that's all completely evaporated. These sources confirm Week 4 was defined by two extremes, either just historic offensive dominance or catastrophic ranking falls.
And often after games that were shockingly lopsided.
Hmm.
That initial hook is so crucial because the volatility wasn't from a bunch of nail-biters. It was driven by pure, unadulterated statistical chaos.
So let's unpack this. I think we have to start with the players whose numbers really set the stage for all this insanity, the players of the week.
Exactly. When you look at the top individual performers, you see the two wildly different ways a team can just assert itself. On the defensive side, we have LSU's A.J. Halsey.
Okay.
3 interceptions. And one of them returned for a defensive touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a performance that changes the entire trajectory of a game instantly.
That right there, that sets up a great win. But then you look at the offensive winner, and the numbers are they're almost impossible to believe.
Florida's DJ Lagway, he accounted for an astounding 8 total touchdowns.
8.
8. That's a video game stat line. It's the kind of performance that should, guarantee an easy, worry-free victory.
I have to pause on that because 8 touchdowns is historic. But how did that astronomical individual effort actually translate to the scoreboard?
Yeah.
Did it lead to some massive blowout? Well, that's the twist that Week 4 delivered.
Yeah.
If you connect Lagway's effort to the final score, it tells a story of pure necessity.
Necessity.
Florida won a shootout against Ole Miss 77-58.
77-58.
Think about that for a second. Lagway puts up 8 touchdowns, and Florida still needed 77 points just to survive.
Wow. That is defensive coordinator purgatory right there. It's just pure, unsustainable offensive overload.
And then you contrast that with Halsey's defensive excellence.
Right.
LSU absolutely annihilated Oklahoma. They won 83-21.
83-21.
A massive blowout where the defensive star helped create a 62-point margin. So you had teams winning by desperately outslugging opponents and teams winning by just crushing them into dust.
And we saw that crushing dominance elsewhere, too. I'm thinking Texas Tech over Utah, 41-7, another statement win. The winners this week were not scraping by.
No, they were making definitive arguments to the voters. And when you have that much one-sided action, the top 25 is, well, it's guaranteed to feel a tremor.
Which brings us to the inevitable rankings meltdown.
Yep.
Okay, let's look at the volatility, because this is where the sources get really compelling. A handful of key games entirely reshaped the top 10, pushing previous contenders right off a cliff. We have to start with the biggest fall.
Miami.
The tumble of Miami. They were sitting at number 2.
And they were the team that suffered the deepest fall. Miami lost to USC 19-14.
Wait, 19-14? That's a 5-point loss at home, losing to a decent but unranked USC team. That shouldn't trigger an 8-spot drop, should it? It pushes them out of the top 5 entirely.
You'd think not, but that's the core insight we can pull from the sources. The loss itself wasn't the catastrophe. It was the manner of the loss.
How so?
The voters weren't reacting to just the score. They were reacting to the exposure of Miami's offensive weakness. Number 2 teams just don't score 14 points at home against a non-elite defense.
Oh.
The voters essentially looked at that close game and decided Miami's previous ranking was a mirage, a complete overvaluation.
So they didn't just lose the game, they lost all the benefit of the doubt they'd built up. The drop from 2 to 10 is an indictment of their perceived quality, much more than a penalty for losing.
Precisely. And it reveals just how fragile the top 5 rankings are right now. And that fragility extends to the traditional powerhouses, too. I mean, if being number 2 doesn't protect you,
Being number 5 certainly won't either.
Georgia felt that pain, too. It confirms that last week's status means absolutely nothing in this environment.
Texas beat Georgia 38-32, a tight, high-stakes game.
And that loss, even though it was close, caused Georgia to drop from number 5 all the way down to number 8. It's not the catastrophic plunge Miami had, but it shows there is zero margin for error in the top 10.
But where there are these dramatic falls, there have to be ascensions to fill the void. Who capitalized the most on this top 10 turmoil?
That would be Texas A&M. They made a massive statement. The specific victory that propelled them was their decisive defeat of Ohio State, 35-14.
Winning by 21 points against a team like Ohio State is an automatic resume builder.
For sure. And that single result moved Texas A&M up from number 3 to number 2, completely restructuring that immediate landscape.
So that leads us to the new structure at the very top. Texas stays securely at number 1, and that win over Georgia was the biggest momentum builder of the week.
It cemented their position. Texas A&M is now 2, and Penn State remains at 4, mostly by just not suffering a collapse.
The chaos below them solidified their spot. Now, I did see that strange detail in the source about Texas climbing from 7 to 3, which sounds contradictory since they were number 1.
Right, and I think what that's really getting at isn't a literal rank change, but more about voter confidence.
So they didn't just keep them at number 1. They decided they were even more deserving of that spot than they were last week.
Exactly. It's the ultimate confirmation that the top is now defined by the winners of these massive head-to-head showdowns.
Okay, so beyond the top 10 earthquakes, let's track the ripple effect across the entire top 25. Let's categorize these shifts. Let's start with the big jumpers, the teams that really gained momentum this week.
The big jumpers are where we see these decisive victories paying just enormous dividends. Look at Alabama. They made a huge leap, rising from number 19 all the way to 12.
7 spots.
7 spots in 1 week. And why such a massive reaction? It's directly tied to their dominating win over Oregon, 42-17. Alabama didn't just beat a top 10 team, they physically dismantled them.
The voters saw that and immediately decided that Alabama, despite maybe some early struggles, was grossly undervalued at 19.
Massively rewarded. And we have to loop back to Florida.
Right. Lagway's 8 touchdowns.
Even with that sloppy defense, the win still resulted in huge movement. They rose from 21 up to 14.
So another 7-spot jump. It confirms that in week 4, winning ugly or winning a shootout was still way better than losing cleanly.
And on the defensive flip side, LSU also rose significantly, moving from 10 to 6. That reflects the sheer dominance of that 83-21 victory. They benefited from their own performance and the collapse of teams above them.
Okay, so whether you win a shootout or a blowout, decisive winning moves you up. But now let's look at the big fallers. This list really shows how costly a single loss was this week.
Oregon is the poster child for disappointment here. Losing 42-17 to Alabama cost them dearly. They had a monumental setback, falling sharply from number 8 all the way down to 19.
11 spots.
Yeah.
If the Miami drop was about fragility, the Oregon drop was about a decisive physical defeat.
Absolutely. And look at Ole Miss, the other team in that 77-58 track meet. They fell from number 9 down to 20.
Another 11-spot drop.
That is definitive proof that scoring 58 points is not enough to save you when you give up 77. The voters clearly decided that kind of defensive vulnerability just can't exist in the top 10.
And Nebraska also paid a severe price, dropping from 12 to 17 after losing to Michigan.
They didn't fall out completely, but the hit to their standing was significant enough to push them out of relevance for now.
So what about the teams that were jostling for position just outside that initial spotlight, the mid-level chaos and the new faces we need to track?
Well, we saw several tight contests near the bottom that had some severe ripple effects. South Carolina just edged out Tennessee 28-23. That result alone was enough to make Tennessee drop 7 spots, from 16 down to 23.
Every close game had major consequences for the loser in this kind of volatile environment. And finally, we have 4 brand new teams that suddenly find themselves in the spotlight.
Yeah, capitalizing on others' misfortunes. We have Colorado entering at number 21, which shows voters believe their recent run is for real.
Yeah.
UCLA sneaks in at 22. Crucially, USC enters at 24, a direct result of that upset over Miami, and Iowa rounds out the field at 25.
Before we wrap up the rankings, we should highlight the quiet performers, the steady climbers who just found upward momentum while chaos was happening all around them.
Georgia Tech. They moved up from 13 to 9, a solid 4-spot jump right into the top 10.
And Auburn is now sitting strong at number 5, moving up from 6.
These teams show that sometimes just avoiding the massive mistakes is as valuable as getting a massive victory.
So let's summarize our deep dive. Week 4 was defined by massive swings fueled by 2 distinct things: the necessity of historic individual performances, like Lagway's 8 touchdowns, and the dominance of defensive-minded blowouts, like LSU's.
But the biggest takeaway has to be the catastrophic crashes of those early favorites like Miami and Ole Miss.
So what does this all mean for the bigger picture?
If we connect this to the broader season, the sheer volume of these high-score games and upset results suggests that the perceived hierarchy of the early weeks, it's completely broken.
The slate truly feels wiped clean.
It is. The top 10 is almost unrecognizable now. Teams that were considered locks for the playoffs have been exposed as vulnerable, which means we're entering a massive period of uncertainty moving forward.
Which raises a really important question for you, the listener, as you look ahead to Week 5 matchups.
Right. We saw these drastic differences in how the voters punish losses. Oregon dropped from 8 all the way to 19 after a huge loss. Miami dropped from 2 to 10 after a tight 5-point loss.
And meanwhile, Alabama rocketed from a struggling 19 all the way up to 12.
A fascinating range of movement, punishment versus reward.
So given those drastic changes in the magnitude of those adjustments, which team won that fell drastically like Oregon, or one that rose a lot but is still outside the top 10, like Alabama, is now the most undervalued dark horse?
Which team has the clearer path back to relevance based on how the voters reacted this week? That's the strategic question we leave you to mull over until our next deep dive.